Alright, you guys remember the Stank Skank Ford Junk? This is a 2016 Ford Escape 1.5 EcoBoost. The transmission has failed at about 150,000 miles. The new one just arrived. But I don't have time to do that right now. And it has kind of taken a backseat to the Stank Skank 2.0. This is a 2018 Ford Escape 1.5 EcoBoost. And this water pump here has failed at 40,000 miles. It has play. It is difficult to turn it. And this bearing grease has all shot out of the sealed bearing, which is sealed and shouldn't be leaking grease. This one's interesting because the book time to do this water pump is about 8 to 10 hours, and that is because it runs behind the timing belt. So even though it's not driven by the timing belt must come off in order to change this out. Now, the reason I bring this up is because this engine has an interesting thing that a lot of Fords, Mazdas, and some Volvos have, which is that the crank has no keyway. Now, a keyway in a crank is basically a notch in which the crankshaft and the pulley align, and then a key goes in to hold the pulley to the crank so that the pulley and the crank cannot spin separate from one another. This does not have that. This engine is literally relying on hopes and dreams that this bolt of the crankshaft stays tight enough where this pulley and the timing belt pulley cannot walk. And usually they're fine. In order to do this job, I have to pin the crankshaft to hold it at top dead center. And the reason why I'm showing this vehicle now, other than to show that there's two Fords in my shop with 100,000 miles difference, and they both are suffering from pretty expensive issues. It's a shame. And they're both Escapes, which leads me to believe that this is a Ford Escape thing. Spending money becomes your nightmare. Underneath this axle in the back here, there is a bracket that holds the axle. That bracket must come off in order to put the pin in the back of the block that goes into the crankshaft. Let me show you. This is the bracket. It comes off, and behind it is the area that we need to access. As you can see, this bracket looks like maybe the bearing has spun in it once or twice. On the original Stank Skank over here, when I pulled the transmission out, I noticed that this bracket, which is installed on this vehicle, has a giant lip that is not supposed to be there. And that is because the axle is trying to walk its way through the bracket. On this vehicle, it's easy to believe that because this bearing is a bit stiff, that's what's caused this to happen. Here's our new bracket in the box. The problem is that on the 40,000 mile one, we realize that the bearing on this engine is fine and spins quite freely. This leads me to believe that if you have a Ford Escape with a 1.5 EcoBoost, it's more than likely your bearing is not doing the spinning. Your axle is spinning the bearing through the bracket that holds it. Because it's a piece of shit. So that's what we have going on here. Two Ford Escapes separated by 2 years in age, 100,000 miles, both looking to pay. It's a shame. Crying shame.